Alright, what is up guys? We're back with another episode of The Witcher lore. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Geralt and Ciri's first encounter within the Brokilon Forest. It is one of my personal favorite moments in the entire saga. It, lack of a better term, it like warms my heart whenever I read it. Just anytime that Geralt and young Ciri have an interaction, I absolutely love that dialogue. The banter between them is always really enjoyable to me, and this was the first time that these two finally met each other, and it's a really cool moment. And so yeah, I just wanted to talk about it. So sit back, relax, grab a drink, do whatever you need to do, grab some food, because this is gonna be a fun one. So yeah, let's get started. So we start off with Geralt traveling to the Brokilon Forest as an envoy, because he has this message to deliver to the kind of lady who oversees the Brokilon Forest. And the Brokilon Forest is kind of this infamous place that people just kind of instinctively know to stay away from. It is the home of the Dryads, which are these kind of like forest creatures that are they look very humanoid. I believe they're also kind of referred to as like eerie wives, which I always found funny. But yeah, they're kind of humanoid. They love nature. And they will put an arrow through your head if you get anywhere near their forest. Like, they're very protective of their home, right? And they also live kind of secluded and isolated from the rest of the world, so they kind of live in their own bubble, right? So yeah, they are pretty violent creatures. Like I said, they will kill anyone who tries to step foot within their forest, but Geralt isn't too worried about it because he's been to the forest, I believe, twice before. He knows the Lady of the Forest, Ithne. The Dryads also call him Gwynblade, White Wolf, so he's been here before. He knows the lady, so that's why he's not too worried about them killing him. So he enters the forest and he's immediately surrounded by Dryads, by a group of Dryads who appear just like noiselessly out of the brush in the thicket. And so actually it was said that like an arrow just like whizzed past his head, whistled past it and just like hit a tree, and like he immediately just kind of like rose up slowly. He put his hands up, he kind of unfastened his sword and threw it on the ground. So all the Dryads are surrounding him. They have their arrows or their bows just like locked on him. He makes the slightest movement, he's dead. And the kind of leader of this little group of Dryads is kind of yelling at him in the Dryads' native language. And for Geralt, it's like he understands the language, or bits and pieces of the language, but he doesn't speak it very well. So like, he tries to say like a couple words in their language, but then he's just like, fuck it, does anybody here speak, common language? And he tells them that I am Gwynblade. I've come here to speak with Lady Ithne. I've been here before, she knows me. So the Dryads, upon hearing the word Gwynblade, they kind of stop and hesitate, and the leader asks, Gwynblade? Vatgern? Which Vatgern translates to Witcher in their language. And Geralt kind of confirms that, like, yes, I am the Witcher. And then they kind of, the leading Dryad kind of curses under her breath because like she doesn't get to shoot him. So the leading Dryad of this group, she sends this kind of blonde-haired young Dryad named Brienne to escort Geralt to the Brokilon Forest capital, Duin Canel, because Geralt by himself, he would probably die on his way there because there are so many traps and other Dryads who might not know who he is, or there's a bunch of monsters also in the forest. So and just the fact that he doesn't know the way to Duin Canal. I believe he's always kind of been blindfolded on the way there, so this is why he needs an escort to take him over there. So yeah, Brienne is basically tasked with escorting Geralt to the capital city. So Geralt and Brienne are traversing through the forest when all of a sudden they hear this scream and they rush towards it. Long story short, they find this kind of centipede-like monster that they run into, kind of terrorizing this, who Geralt at first assumed was this little creature that I believe he mistaken it to be a nymph or something like that. Anyway, he gets into the fight with the centipede monster to kind of, save the creature. He actually almost dies at one point. If Brienne wasn't there, Geralt probably would have been in serious trouble. But Brienne actually saves his life. So yeah, they defeat the centipede monster, and Geralt finds the creature that was being terrorized by the centipede. And what he had assumed to be this nymph or kind of leprechaun-like creature actually turned out to be a ordinary little girl. A girl with mousy gray hair, huge green eyes, and she was no more than 10 years old. "Who are you?" Geralt asks. "How did you get here?" And she did not reply. And then he thinks to himself, where have I seen her before? I've seen her before somewhere. Either her or someone very similar to her. And it's also very, very important to know that Ciri's mother, Pavetta, looked like they looked eerily similar to each other, especially the green eyes. So that's probably where Geralt is getting this feeling that I've seen her before, at least someone that looks like her. So Ciri is kind of remaining silent through Geralt kind of pestering her. Like, he keeps asking her, like, who are you? How did you get here? Why are you here? And Ciri's just kind of like sniffing and she's just staying silent. And then you also have Brienne next to Geralt, kind of like, Gwynblade, we need to go. Usually, if there's one centipede here, then there will be more around the area or something like that. So she's kind of in a rush to, get a move on. So then he asks Ciri one more time, who are you, I said. What's your name? And then she finally says, Ciri. Now, Geralt is kind of going through, like, the different possibilities in his head of, why she's here, who she is exactly. So then he asks Brienne, is it possible that, because the Dryads, they kind of steal, little girls, little human girls, and they bring them back to the forest to turn them into Dryads. So he asks Brienne, is this one of the girls that had maybe escaped from your forest, from the capital, and was trying to get away from you guys, maybe? And Brienne is like, no, I've never seen this girl before. So that kind of crosses that off. But then Geralt remembers, before he had entered the forest, one of the corpses, or what he assumed, one of the bodies that was laying on the outskirts of the forest before he entered, happened to be one of his friends, Frexnet. And Frexnet had told Geralt that you need to find her, you need to find the princess. And Geralt at that moment didn't know what he was talking about, but now it's like coming back to him like, oh, like this might be who Frexnet was talking about. So then Geralt asks her yet again, where are you from? I'm asking you, you brat. And then this is where we kind of see that first, like, that fire that Ciri has always had. This is like the first time that we really get to see it, because she's like, she responds to him, how dare you talk to me like that? And she like lifts her head and she like stamps her foot on the ground. And then Geralt's like, oh, okay, so you're a princess, at least in speech, but your appearance definitely doesn't support that. And then he kind of surmises that she's from Verdun. And he's like, do you know that you're being looked for? Don't worry, I will deliver you home. And the moment that Geralt tells her that he's going to take her back home, she just takes off running in the other direction, which I thought was really funny. They also have, like, this is one of the many reasons why this is like one of my favorite stories in the entire saga. It's just the banter between young Ciri and Geralt. Because after he kind of gets her again, after she runs away, um, he keeps like telling her that you're a foolish brat. Like, this is Brokilon. Like, wasn't the centipede enough for you? You won't last until morning if you run away or if you separate yourself from us. And don't you understand that yet? And then Ciri kind of yells back at him like, don't touch me, you peasant. I'm a princess, so you better be careful. And then Geralt just reminds her again that you're a foolish brat. And Ciri comes back, I'm a princess. But princesses don't roam through the forests alone. Princesses also have clean noses, and Ciri gets like a little bit like embarrassed by that, and she like wipes her nose down. And then Ciri just yells back at him, I'll have you beheaded, and her too, as she's like kind of pointing at the Dryad Brienne. So Geralt begins to grow rather weary from all of this, and he says, alright, enough of this. Why were you running away, your highness, and where to? What were you so afraid of? And she says nothing, and she just sniffs. One of my favorite things is that throughout this entire story, I guess Ciri has this really bad runny nose, so she's like constantly just like sniffing and wiping her nose. So I always thought that was really funny. So anyway, Geralt responds, very well, as you wish. We're going then, so if you want to stay alone in the forest, that's your choice. But the next time that one of these centipedes comes and attacks you, don't yell, because it doesn't befit a princess. A princess dies without even a squeal. So wipe your nose first. So let's go, Brienne, and farewell, your highness. Wait, huh? I'm coming with you. Ah, we are greatly honored, aren't we, Brienne? But you won't take me to Kistrin again, do you swear? Who is... Oh, damn it. Kistrin. Prince Kistrin? The son of King Ervil of Verdun, right? And Ciri kind of pouts her lips and she sniffs again and turns away. And then Brienne kind of comes in and she's like, enough of this. Let's march on, Gwynblade. So then before they continue on their path, a little something happens to Ciri. She says, ow. The little girl yelped as she took a step. What's the matter? I've done something to my leg. Wait, Brienne. Come here, you little scamp. I'll carry you on my back. And she was warm and smelt like a wet sparrow. What's your name, princess? I've forgotten. Ciri. And your estates? Where do they lie, if I may ask? I won't tell, she grunted. I won't tell, and that's that. I'll get by. Don't wriggle or sniff right by my ear. What were you doing in Brokilon? Did you get lost? Did you lose your way? Not a chance. I never get lost. Don't wriggle. Did you run away from Kistrin or from the Nastrog castle? Before or after the wedding? How did you know? She sniffed. I'm staggeringly intelligent. Why did you run away to Brokilon of all places? Weren't there any safer directions? I couldn't control my stupid horse. You're lying, princess. Looking at your size, the most you could ride is a cat, and a gentle one at that. I was riding with Marek, Sir Voyamir's esquire, but the horse fell in the forest and broke its leg, and we lost our way. You said that never happens to you. He got lost, not me. It was foggy and we lost our way. So Geralt starts thinking to himself that this Squire Merrick had helped Ciri to escape from Prince Kistrin, so she wouldn't have to marry him. And like on their, while they were escaping, they had the terrible misfortune of running into Brienne and the other dryads, and the squire ended up with an arrow through the head. Ciri somehow escaped from that, and she ended up lost in the Brokilon Forest. I asked you if you bolted from Nastrog Castle before or after the wedding. I just ran away, and it's none of your business, she grunted. Grandmama told me I had to go there and meet him, that Kistrin. Just meet him. But that father of his, that big-bellied king, Ervil, he kept on, the wedding, but I don't want him, that Kistrin. Grandmama said, is Prince Kistrin so revolting? I don't want him, Ciri proudly declared, sniffing loudly. He's fat, stupid, and his breath smells. Before I went there, they showed me a painting, but he wasn't fat in the painting. I don't want a husband like that. I don't want a husband at all. Ciri, the Witcher said hesitantly. Kistrin is still a child, just like you. In a few years, he might turn into a handsome young man. Then they can send me another painting in a few years, she snorted. And him too, because he told me that I was much prettier in the painting they showed him. And he confessed that he loves Alvina, a lady in waiting, and he wants to be a knight, see? He doesn't want me and I don't want him. So what's the use in the wedding? Ciri, the Witcher muttered again. He's a prince and you're a princess. Princesses and princes married just like that. That's how it is. That's the custom. You sound just like all the rest of them. You think that just because I'm small you can lie to me. I'm not lying. Yes, you are. Geralt said nothing. So we now know why Ciri is in the Brokilon Forest. Essentially, she just ran away from this marriage that was supposed to happen, that was set up for her and this prince, Kistrin. But on her way, from escaping with this squire, the squire gets shot down by one of the dryads, and Ciri escapes into the forest, and this is where we catch up to her. But now things start to get a little funny because, Geralt is in the Brokilon Forest at, the exact same time that this is happening, right? So, a coincidence? I think not. It might be, something bigger than just a coincidence. Like, is this destiny possibly that Geralt and Ciri would meet up, like this? Like, it's a little weird, right? So yeah, we'll definitely get into the destiny talk a little bit later, but those questions start to arise when you think about that. Hey, which way are we going? Ciri asked glumly. I want to know. Geralt said nothing. Answer when I ask a question. Do you know who's sitting on you? He didn't react. I'll bite you in the ear, she yelled. The Witcher had had enough. He pulled the girl off his back and put her on the ground. Now listen, you brat, he said harshly, struggling with his belt buckle. So I love that he's like literally taking off his belt right now. In a minute, I'll put you across my knee, pull down your britches, and tan your backside. No one will stop me from doing it because this isn't a royal court, and I'm not your flunky or your servant. You'll soon regret you didn't stay a Nastrog. You'll soon see it's better being a princess than a snot-nosed kid who got lost in the forest. Because it's true, a princess is allowed to act obnoxiously, and no one thrashes a princess's backside with a belt. At most, her husband, the prince, might with his own hand. Ciri cowered and sniffed a few times. Brian watched dispassionately, leaning against a tree. Well, the Witcher asked, wrapping his belt around his wrist. Are we going to behave with dignity and temperance? If not, we shall set about tanning Her Majesty's hide. Well, what's it to be? The little girl sniveled and sniffed, then eagerly nodded. Are you going to be a good princess? Yes, she mumbled. Darkness will soon fall, Brian said. So let us make haste, Gwynblade. So this whole back and forth between Ciri and Geralt, man, I really loved it. Just because I feel like I'm making an assumption here, but you would have to think that Ciri, in all her time being a princess, has always gotten, whatever she's wanted. She's probably surrounded by a bunch of yes people, or people who are ready to drop anything at her beck and call, right? So it was really fascinating to see Ciri kind of have to maneuver and being put in this position where she has to kind of adapt and deal with someone who is the complete opposite of probably the people she's been surrounded by, her whole life. Having to deal with someone who, is commanding, dignity and temperance. Having to deal with someone who isn't going to put up with, a little girl who thinks the world revolves around her, right? So I really like that kind of, just that interaction between the two of them. And I guess for lack of a better term, it's almost like Ciri getting a taste of what the real world is, almost, right? because she isn't, in her bubble, in the court, or she isn't, with her grandma Calanthe. She's not in that kind of headspace in Brokilon with Geralt right now. So it's really like her first time getting a taste of, what the world outside, royalty is like. And so we continue our path through the Brokilon Forest. "Noble lord," Ciri began after a long silence. "My name is Geralt. What's the matter?" "I'm awfully hungry." "We'll stop in a moment. It'll be dark soon." "I can't go on," she sniveled. "I haven't eaten since—" "Here, stop whining." He reached into a saddlebag and took out a piece of fatback, a small round of white cheese, and 2 apples. "Here, have that." "What's that yellow stuff?" "Fatback." "No, I won't eat that," she grunted. "That's fine," he said instinctively, stuffing the fatback into his mouth. "Eat the cheese and an apple, just one." "Why only one?" "Don't wriggle, have both." "Geralt?" "Mm-hmm." "Thank you." "Don't mention it. Food will do you good." "I didn't... not for that. I mean that too, but you saved me from that centipede. I almost died of fright." "You almost died," he confirmed seriously. "You almost died in an extremely painful and hideous way," he thought. "But you ought to thank Brienne." "What is she?" "A dryad." "An eerie wife?" "Yes." "So she's... They kidnapped children. She's kidnapped us." "Hey, but you aren't small. But why does she speak so strangely?" "That's just her way. It's not important. What's important is how she shoots. Don't forget to thank her when we stop." "I won't forget," she sniffed. "Don't wriggle, future Princess of Verdun, ma'am." "I'm not going to be a princess," she muttered. Very well, very well. You won't be a princess. You'll become a hamster and live in a burrow." "No, I won't. You don't know anything. Don't squeak in my ear. And don't forget about the strap. I'm not going to be a princess. I'm going to be..." "Yes? What?" "It's a secret." "Oh, yes, a secret. Splendid." He raised his head. "What is it, Brienne?" The dryad had stopped. She shrugged and looked at the sky. "I cannot go on," she said softly. "And neither can you, I warrant, with her on your back, Windblade. We shall stop here, and it will darken soon." So Ciri, Geralt, and Brienne are resting for the night, and we kind of get this little conversation between Brienne and Geralt where Brienne kind of marvels at Ciri. She's like really surprised, just at the fact that she's been able to like survive in the forest for this long. And then she also kind of says that she's robust, she's healthy, and she's stout. She definitely would come in useful to us. And that's basically when she kind of tells Geralt that she belongs to us now. You know, she entered the forest, so now she belongs to us. And Geralt tells her back, Lady Ithne will decide. And you could definitely tell at this point that, you know, Geralt doesn't want to see, you know, Ciri be given up to the dryads, to be turned into a dryad herself. So he kind of says it's up to his kind of persuasion skills with Lady Ithne to see if he can get Ciri back. So I thought that was really like kind of getting a little glimpse in Geralt's heart to see that if he had a choice, he wouldn't want Ciri to be, you know, turned into a dryad here. So he's going to try his best to kind of convince Ithne to let the girl come with him. So like I had said earlier, the three are about to call it a night, and I just want to, you know, run through some dialogue that is just absolutely adorable. So Geralt is talking to Ciri and he's telling her to go to sleep, and he also calls her an orphan, and she's like, "Orphan? She growled. "I'm a princess, not an orphan, and I have a grandma, and my grandma is a queen, so you better be careful. When I tell her that you wanted to give me the strap, my grandma will order your head chopped off, and you will see." "Ghastly, Ciri, have mercy." "Not a chance." "But you're a good little girl, and beheading hurts awfully. You won't say anything, will you?" "I will." "Ciri?" I will. "Afraid, are you?" "Dreadfully." "You know, Ciri, you can die from having your head cut off." "Are you mocking me?" "I wouldn't dream of it." She'll put you in your place, you'll see. No one takes liberties with my grandma. When she stamps her foot, the greatest knights and warriors kneel before her. I've seen it myself. And if one of them is disobedient, then it's chop. And off with his head. Dreadful. Ciri? Uh-huh. I think they'll cut off your head. My head? Naturally. After all, your grandma is the queen, and she arranged a marriage with Kistrin and sent you to Nastraw Castle in Verdun. You were disobedient, and as soon as you'll return, it will be chop. And off with your head. And the little girl fell silent, as she even stopped fidgeting. He heard her smacking her lips, biting her lower lip, and sniffing. Geralt? What, Ciri? Grandmama knows I have to go home. I can't be a princess or the wife of that stupid Kistrin. I have to go home, and that's that. Grandmama knows, Ciri continued, because... Geralt, promise me that you won't tell anybody because it's a terrible secret. Dreadful. I'm serious. You need to swear. I swear. Very well, I'll tell you. My mom was a witch, so you better watch your step. And my dad was enchanted too. It was all told to me by one of my nannies, and when my grandma found out about it, there was a dreadful to-do. Because I'm destined, you know? To do what? I don't know, Ciri said intently, but I'm destined. That's what my nanny said. And Grandma said she won't let anyone, that the whole ruddy castle would collapse first. Do you understand? And Nanny said that nothing at all can help with destiny. Ha! And then Nanny wept and Grandmama yelled. Do you see? I'm destined, and I won't be the wife of that silly Kistrin. Geralt? Go to sleep, he yawned, so that his jaw creaked. Go to sleep, Ciri. Tell me a story. What? Tell me a story, she snorted. How am I supposed to sleep without a story? I mean, really? I don't know any damn stories, just go to sleep. You're lying, you do. What? Did no one tell you any stories when you were little? What are you laughing about? Nothing, I just recalled something. Aha, you see? Go on. What? Tell me a story. He laughed again, put his hands under his head and looked up at the stars twinkling beyond the branches above their heads. There was once a cat, he began, an ordinary tabby mouser. And one day that cat went off all by itself on a long journey to a terrible dark forest. He walked and he walked and he walked. Don't think, Ciri mumbled, cuddling up to him, that I'll fall asleep before he gets there. Keep quiet, rascal. So, he walked and he walked until he came across a fox, a red fox. Brian sighed and laid down beside the Witcher on the other side and also snuggled up a little bit. Very well, Ciri sniffed. Say what happened next. The fox looked at the cat. Who are you? He asked. I'm a cat, said the cat. Ha, said the fox. But aren't you afraid, cat, to be roaming the forest alone? What will you do if the king comes a-hunting, with hounds and mountain hunters and beaters? I tell you, cat, said the fox, the chase is a dreadful hardship to creatures like you and I. You have a pelt and I have a pelt, and hunters never spare creatures like us because hunters have sweethearts and lovers, and their little hands and necks get cold, so they make muffs and collars for those strumpets to wear. What are muffs? Ciri asked. Don't interrupt. And the fox went on, I, cat, know how to outwit them, for I have 1,286 ways to outfox those hunters, so cunning am I. And you, cat, how many ways do you have? Oh, what a fine tale, Ciri said, cuddling more tightly to the Witcher. What did the cat say? Aye, whispered Brian from the other side. What did the cat say? The Witcher turned his head, and the Dryad's eyes were sparkling. Her mouth was open, and she was running her tongue over her lips. He could understand that little Dryads were hungry for tales just like these, and just like Witchers, because both of them were seldom told bedtime stories. Little Dryads fell asleep listening rapidly to the wind blowing in the trees, and little Witchers fell asleep listening rapidly to the aching arms and legs. To their aching arms and legs. Well, Ciri said impatiently, what next? The cat said, I, fox, don't have any ways. I only know one thing. Up a tree as quick as can be. That ought to be enough, oughtn't it? And the fox burst out laughing. Ha, he said. What a goose you are. Flourish your strippy tail and flee, for you'll perish if the hunters trap you. And suddenly from nowhere the horns began to sound, and the hunters leapt out from the bushes, and they saw the cat and the fox, and they were upon them. Oh, Ciri sniffed, and the dryad shifted suddenly. Quiet. And they were upon them, yelling, "Have them! Skin them! We'll make muffs out of them! Muffs!" And they set the hounds on the fox and the cat darted up a tree like every cat does, right to the very top. But the hounds seized the fox, and before Reynard had time to use any of his cunning ways, he'd been made into a collar, and the cat meowed from the top of the tree and hissed at the hunters, but they couldn't do anything to him, because the tree was high as hell. They stood at the foot of the tree swearing like troopers, but they had to go away empty-handed. And then the cat climbed down from the tree and slunk calmly home. What happened then? Nothing. That's the end. What about the moral? Ciri asked. Tales always have a moral, don't they? Hey, Brian said, hugging Geralt even harder. What's a moral? A good story has a moral and a bad one doesn't, Ciri sniffed with conviction. That was a good one, the dryad yawned. So it has what it ought to have, you moppet. You should have scurried up a tree from that centipede, like that canny tomcat. Not pondered, but scurried up the tree without a thought. And that is all the wisdom in it, to survive and not to be caught. The Witcher laughed softly. And so the very next morning, the group arrives at Duin Canal, the heart of Brokilon, this place that's just like ripped out of a fairy tale. It has these, massive trees that are soaring into the sky, and they have cottages built into the tree trunks. So Ciri and Geralt get split up, and the cottage that Geralt goes to, he actually reunites with his friend that he had met up with in the beginning of the story, Frixnet. He had been hurt, and the Dryads had told Geralt to go with Brienne and that they will take care of him, and they kept their word because he's in this cottage and he's doing a lot better than he was in the beginning of the story, so that was cool to see. So Lady Ethne enters the room, and she just kind of like has this really demanding kind of presence to her. As soon as she comes in, like Geralt immediately bows down on one knee, and she tells him, "Get up, Gwynblade, and welcome. Greetings, Ethne, Lady of Brokilon. I have the pleasure to host you in my forest once again, although you come here without my knowledge or permission. Entering Brokilon without my permission or knowledge is perilous, White Wolf, even for you." So some time passes, and Geralt moves to another cottage where Ethne is combing Ciri's hair, and they kind of get into a little back and forth about various things. The most important thing is destiny, which is something that Ethne strongly believes in. That destiny is kind of, tying everything together, that it is just involved with every little thing that we do in life. Geralt, not so much. He's the complete opposite of that, right? So Lady Ethne turns over to Ciri and she says, say it again, Ciri. Repeat what you told me before the Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, White Wolf, entered. That Witcher who does not know, say it again, child of the Elder Blood. Your venerable lady, Ciri said in a voice that cracked. Do not keep me here. I cannot. I want to go home. I want to return home with Geralt. I must go with him. Why with him? For he is my fate. Ethne turned away and she looked very pale. And what do you say to that, Geralt? And Ethne kind of gets a little frustrated because she believes that it's Ciri's destiny and her fate to stay in Brokilon to become a Dryad, when you have Ciri basically saying the opposite, that it's her fate to leave Brokilon and go with Geralt. And also, on a side note, how Ciri has come to the conclusion that her destiny is to go with Geralt is because her nanny also said that, when she was telling Ciri that, she's destined for someone, she specifically told Ciri that she was destined for a Witcher, specifically. So now Ciri is like, this is him. This is the Witcher that I am destined for. This is who I am supposed to go with. So, Lady Ethne then, she wants to test out this destiny. She wants to show Geralt what destiny is exactly. So she does this little test where she brings in this cup of water and she gives it to Ciri, and Ciri drinks it, but nothing happens to her. Nothing at all. Like, the water doesn't affect her. And when that happens, Geralt is kind of just shaking his head in disbelief because he sees the water not affecting Ciri, and he's thinking it's some kind of trick, that it's probably just regular water and that's why Ciri wasn't affected. So yeah, he's calling bullshit on this. So then Ithne tells Ciri once she's done drinking, choose. Do you wish to remain here in Brokilon, or do you want to follow your destiny? And of course Ciri says, I wish to follow my destiny. So Geralt is like really skeptical about the water that Ciri drank actually being the water of Brokilon. So Ithne is like, okay, if you don't believe that it truly is the water of Brokilon, then here, take a sip, Geralt. And he's like, okay, because he doesn't believe that this is actually the real water. He doesn't believe in destiny, that you know, that Ciri was unaffected by this, and that destiny is playing into the part of Ciri leaving the forest and to go with him. Like, he just does not believe this happening. So he takes the water and he's immediately affected by it. And so he enters this trance. He's seeing a bunch of visions and these array of colors, and he's finally, he basically gets a look at his destiny. He hears this voice and it tells him, do you remember? Do you remember? And it's his own voice speaking to him. And it says that I shall return in 6 years. Which is referring to the fact that he had told Calanthe, Ciri's grandmother, that he would return to get the child that he was promised in 6 years, but he never did that. So now, you know, that he's remembering that he was supposed to take a child, the child that was promised to him, that he didn't know was a girl. So he's remembering that. He's also remembering mousy hair and green eyes, which is Ciri. And then he's remembering Yennefer as well, and he's hearing these voices telling him too little, it's not enough, something more is needed. And then he yells out, Yennefer. And his own voice is trying to convince him that there is no destiny, that there is none, that it does not exist, and the only thing that everyone is destined for is death. And then he hears another voice telling him that you sneer at destiny, you sneer at it, and trifle with it. The sword of destiny has 2 blades. You are one of them. Is the second death? But it is we who die. Die because of you. Death cannot catch up with you, so it must settle for us. Death dogs your footsteps, White Wolf, but others die because of you. And do you remember me? Calanthe, you can save him, the voice of Ithne from behind the curtain of smoke. You can save him, child of the Elder Blood, before he plunges into the nothingness which he has come to love, into the Black Forest which has no end. So that's Geralt's destiny right there. You know, he's literally seeing, you know, or just being reminded of his destiny, which is Ciri, but also, you know, kind of getting, you know, some visions of Yennefer as well, because it's Geralt, Ciri, and Yennefer, all 3 of their destinies are linked and tied together, you know? Like, I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but just Geralt and Yennefer by themselves isn't enough. They need that something more, and that something more is Ciri. And so Geralt and Ciri leave the Brokilon Forest, and they meet up with Ermion, and this is the last little part of the story. How do you know Ciri would want to go with me? Because of some old prophecies? No, Ermion said gravely, because she only fell asleep after you cuddled her, because she mutters your name and searches for your hand in your sleep? Enough, Geralt got up, because I'm liable to get emotional. Farewell, bearded one. My compliments to Calanthe, and think something up for Ciri's sake. You will not escape, Geralt. From destiny? No, the druid said, looking at the sleeping child. From her. And then Geralt starts riding away slowly, and then breaks my heart every time. Geralt! He turned around, and Ciri was standing on the brow of the hill, a tiny gray figure with wind-blown, mousy hair. Don't go, she waved. Don't go, she yelled shrilly. Don't go! I have to, he thought. I have to, Ciri. Because I always do. You won't get away, she cried. Don't go thinking that. You can't run away. I'm your destiny. Do you hear that? You can't run away. I'm your destiny. Do you hear? There is no destiny, he thought. It does not exist. The only thing that everyone is destined for is death. Death is the other blade of the 2-edged sword. I am the first blade and the second is death. which dogs my footsteps, and I may not expose you to that, Ciri. I am your destiny. The words reached his ears from the hilltop more softly and more despairingly. He nudged the horse with his heel and rode straight ahead, heading deep into the black, cold, and boggy forest as though into an abyss, into the pleasant, familiar shade, into the gloom which seemed to have no end. And so he leaves her, unwilling to accept his destiny. He just takes off and he runs away from his destiny yet again. And it was really sad, but yeah, it was really sad. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. Really enjoyed making it. Like I said, it's one of my favorite stories in the entire saga. Just Geralt meeting Ciri, meeting his destiny for the very first time. It was a great read. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.